Uncle D, Aunt Alice, and Mom are going away for the weekend. Interesting. Was my nephew Sean asking me or just informing me? My name was Daniel, but my nieces and nephew shortened my name. I liked it. Alice wouldn't really be home for the weekend, so all I had to do was close up for the night. In the middle of the day, the phone beeps several times. I reluctantly checked it and found a couple of messages from Alice. He and Rhoda pooled their money to buy an antique side table, which they hoped to resell for a good profit, but spent the money in the process, so they'll just be window shopping until the next night train home. Attached to it was a photograph. A small brown table with thin, worn-out legs and a couple of drawers hidden under the lid. It looked ancient. It also looked damn ugly. It certainly looked out of place in the hotel room the two of them shared, which seemed to be furnished with standard, cheap as can be, hotel furniture, worn and shabby. More interesting were the 19th century town clock visible through the window and what appeared to be Morris dancers in the square in front of it. Oh well, at least they'd have some entertainment, although I doubted that the Morris dancing, men dressed like hillbillies with bells on their feet, dancing in circles and apparently threatening each other with sticks, would qualify as to the category of entertainment. I chuckled to myself. As far as I could tell, they had yet to make a profit on anything they bought, but they really loved antiques, and the two of them would spend a weekend every couple of months buying junk and trying to resell it as treasure. I didn't mind. It gave me a worry-free weekend, and they were both always excited and happy to discover something worthwhile. Gently shaking my head at my wife's eternal hope, but being a skeptic, I examined her antique table. I surfed the internet and found it was probably worth about £20, a 1970s knockoff in a cheap French style. An antique store in another city sold the same one for $30, including shipping costs. The daughters-in-law would suffer significant losses in this case. I sighed. They both loved their treasure hunts, but it seemed to cost a lot more than they brought in, and the junk they couldn't sell always graced our house. Then I beamed. A mistake like that meant that Alice would soon try to make it up to me with a lot of love, which was always a good thing. She would be a little quiet and depressed for a while, but then she would start trying to scam me out of money for their next weekend. Damn it, I didn't mind too much. She could spend girls' nights out, then I would object to it, which in turn would make her an unhappy wife. Antique shopping with my sister-in-law was as dangerous as spending the night in a bingo hall. I didn't mind subsidizing her hobby to some extent and told her so from the very beginning. But when he and Rhoda drove up and down hundreds of tiny villages to see if they had decent shops, I would get a huge gas bill. When I objected, they decided that it would be cheaper for them to rent a room in one of the hotels in the area and use it as a base. One night turned into 2 every 3 months, and they looked like happy hens with a brood of chicks. Alan, my brother, was a bit of a cheapskate and moaned for a while, but Rhoda seemed to somehow talk him into it. So he smiled and stopped grumbling about having to share expenses. Of course, I couldn't guess how she made him so flexible. This adventure will cost them both £400 of their weekend budget, spent on the dubious pleasure of window shopping and dancing with Morris. I shook my head and laughed again. Finally, I grabbed my coat from the rack and went for a walk. The day was cold and fresh, and it was not in vain that I took my coat. When I got home, I absent-mindedly threw it on the hanger. As always, it fell to the floor. This always irritated me because the hooks were too short and the coat always fell to the floor if not hung carefully. I remembered seeing something very similar in my previous searches and wondered how much Alice might get for the hanger if I insisted she get rid of it. Maybe she will make a profit, which would be nice. Strangely, when I went to the computer and started looking at other photos of antiques, I couldn't remember any parts of the coat hanger. I went back, looked at her for a while, and then went back to my desk to try again. Nothing. I took a photo of the coat rack with my phone, deciding to place it next to the monitor as a reference. But as soon as I looked at the photograph, I found that it suddenly became clearer in my memory. Returning to the computer, I looked at the pictures of clothes hangers, the pages flashing as I clicked on the mouse. There were 3 photos from 3 different stores, so the chances of it being a rare antique were so slim that shark shit would have been off the charts. One of the stores on the Google Images page advertising a coat rack was the same one that sold Alice's table. I shook my head. In the product listing, I saw a photo of the mug they bought last weekend, a huge mug with the royal wedding on it. There was a mug there, and there was the name of the store that sold it. 3 items purchased by enterprising entrepreneurs were available from the same store, Taylor's Antiques in Harlington. Once is interesting, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is worth exploring. If women were to visit different areas every weekend in search of rare and unique items, of course the chances of buying 3 items also available in the same store would be quite low. And if their purchases were available everywhere, they must have realized that they could not make a profit. I went around the house looking for other things that my wife had not yet given to someone else. A few minutes later, I photographed a jewelry box that played a tune while a ballerina spun whenever the lid was lifted, a brass snuff box with a decent design engraved on the lid, and a presumably Victorian tailor's mannequin that now decorated our spare room. The jewelry box turned out to be so common that I could buy 3 within a 5-kilometer radius of my home, while the other 2 were not so common. But all 3 were advertised on the Taylor's Antiques website. This was very strange because the store was in Harlington in Bedfordshire, and the hotel the women had booked was outside Ashford in Kent, where there were many antique shops. They weren't that far apart, 100 miles or so, but the whole of Greater London was between them. Something was clearly suspicious. Next stop was Google Maps. Harlington was by no means big, not much more than a hamlet with grandiose dreams of being a village. The photographs on this page showed a bleak little cluster of houses, pubs, and shops, although the clock tower on the small village hall was unique. There was enough detail in the photo to identify the tower as the same one as in the photo Alice and Rhoda sent me. So how the hell did they end up there? There was something about the name of the village, something haunting, that my memory recognized but refused to detail. After trying different things to get my slow brain moving, I finally checked the phony prefix online and found hundreds of pages of names listed in this area. I sighed and started clicking. Suddenly one name popped up. Talbot S. Mr. 1472 Sandone Road, Harlington. 809476 Talbot. Chris Talbot, he or his brother Callum. The Talbot twins, better known as the Toastpot twins, were potential toughs when we were still at school. They were low-level, lower-class bastards who bullied their lives, even challenging my brother and I by trying to pick up our girlfriends in our penultimate year of school. They were 2 years older than Alan and 3 older than me, but they were a year behind me in school, having spent a couple of years in a reformatory. Alan and I did not back down, and the showdown took place behind the bike sheds. As always happened when there was a secret fight at school, the area was filled with an overly enthusiastic audience. The Toastpots treated it like some kind of championship fight and seemed to be imitating Rocky Balboa, shadowboxing, running in small circles. Alan and I simply watched them from the other end of the open area in the center of the crowd. We made a plan, and acting like 5-year-olds with a sugar rush wasn't part of it. The 2 girls at the center of this mess were among a gaggle of girls off to the side, in neutral territory between the 2 factions, which was disappointing. It would be a little more reassuring to know that they are at least on our side. The twins were big, with strong house muscles, built up by years of forced labor on their stepfather's farm. So when they attacked, we wisely cheated and pulled out the cricket bats we had hidden in the bushes, and after we had bowled a couple of times, they didn't want to fight anymore. I wasn't stupid. I sold telecommunications equipment, mostly to government agencies that already knew exactly what they wanted. Basically, all they really needed was someone to hold their hands while they signed contracts, which didn't require much brain power. No, I was not an intellectual, but I could guess what was going on here. The scheme was quite simple. I thought for a while, and then called my brother. After some discussion, Alan agreed with my conclusions. Our wives have been cheating on the Talbots and me for a couple of years now. My older brother was furious. However, my feelings puzzled me. I was angry at Alice for her betrayal, especially because she regularly associated with assholes who were so much below her in class and quality, but I did not suffer. I was hurt, but not devastated, and I felt deep disappointment in her choice, but not despair. I didn't feel like playing any more online games, and the rain had stopped, so I wandered into the store and bought a pint of milk instead. I found myself staring at the beer shelves and really wanted a liter or two of Newcastle's finest brown ale. Unfortunately, I returned home to a cup of tea and some chocolate snacks, lost in my thoughts. I was startled when my phone rang. "Yes, hello? Daniel?" Alice's voice. "It's you?" "Yes. What did you want, Alice?" Your brother was just here." I was surprised. It started working much earlier than I expected. What did he say? He didn't say a word. He just stood there, his face so red I thought he was having a heart attack. He then hit Rhoda so hard that she fell and dragged her out of the room. Should I call the police? Are you sure you want to shed light on everything? I think this will reveal your little secret, don't you? Or did you really think that Alan's actions happened out of the blue? He just woke up and decided to take out his dissatisfaction with life on Rod? This time, the pause was even longer. "What do you mean?" she asked finally. "Alice, this is unworthy of you. You should have realized the moment Alan showed up at a hotel miles away from where you were supposed to be that we knew all about your disgusting little weekend." There was a faint sob, and I so clearly imagined her there, sitting on the bed in a robe. Her face was pink, and her eyes were red from crying. However, I didn't feel much sympathy. Heck, for all I knew, she could be wearing sheer satin chemise and lying comfortably with a glass of champagne and a big smile. "I'm sorry," I sighed heavily. "Yes, we are all sorry. And what will your apology give us?" "So, what do we do now?" she asked quietly after a long silence. "We don't do anything. I'll probably find another place to live unless you want to move out and live with your siblings." "God, no," she stated decisively. It sounds like you clearly don't have enough positive emotions about them. So it was just for sex then? What? I'm not on your boat anymore? Are you tired of Mr. Vanilla?" Well, yes and no. What? Does it make sense? I love you and I like making love to you. But they were the complete opposite of you in every way, and that made it exciting. "Ugh," I said, despite appreciating her honesty. But I didn't take into account that she slept with both of them. It never occurred to me. "They are both? Really? God, I'm even more disappointed in you. How could I not see this need in you to indulge your basis desirous? What's next? Are you going to go out and steal things, hurt children, torture animals, rape, and kill people?" Oh, come on, Daniel. I admit that I cheated on you, but it was just sex. I do not deserve this. I'm not that bad. I think it's quite bad. You happily went and changed, which is a primitive desire. It's the cavernous part of your brain that screams, "I want it, so I'll get it no matter what." Deception, theft, rape, murder. All this is part of the primitive brain. That's why we don't do that, and created civilization to try to ensure it. It also means that the person who does such things is not evolved enough. He doesn't have enough empathy to be civilized, because what all of these things have in common is that when you allow yourself to do this, someone always gets hurt. The cost to the person doing this is often negligible because someone else always pays the price in pain. And with your actions, you showed who you are and what you are. I am deeply disappointed in myself for not realizing this. Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. I admitted that I cheated on you, but I wasn't trying to kill you or steal from you or anything. No, you just did what hurt me the most. Even worse, you deliberately planned it, carried it out, and even made me pay for it, all the while knowing it would cause me great pain. I'm really sorry, but I still don't see the difference, and if you think that in this situation there is a lesser degree of pain that gives you salvation, then you are even further along the path to this monkey brain than I thought. Alan, I never thought you would find out. I didn't mean to hurt you. I love you. You keep saying it, and maybe it's true. But you still did it happily and with evil intent. You never once tried to protect me from that cave woman you have inside. In fact, I'm probably disparaging the Stone Age people by saying this. Monkey brain sounds better. Not for me, she said miserably. I am currently married to an underdeveloped being in human form. Stop that. It's not fair. You're just trying to hurt me. It's a fight-or-flight reflex, Alice, I said casually. It's another part of the basic brain, except this part is trying to defend itself and survive when it's attacked. I'm not attacking you. I never meant... How do you think I should react when I find out that you have a threesome with your sister-in-law every 3 months and amusingly make me pay in pain and money for the privilege of being horned? Or when I realize that you were pointing me in one direction and then going in another to hide your basest motives? Or when I realize that you buy junk from the same store around the corner and pretend to dig it up in different places on your antique shopping trips? Did you imagine that I would continue to ignore all this? Or did you assume that I wouldn't care, and maybe even be happy that you were finally able to satisfy that arboreal primate inside of you? No. No matter how you look at it, you attacked me. I didn't do it. I didn't think about anything like that. I thought you'd never know. So I never considered any of these questions. And it never occurred to me that you were paying for my deception. It was just part of our budget. How did you find out about this? And why do you say that? I've never heard you talk like that. Where does it leave from? Ordinary mind, Alice. Your instincts brought you back to your primal base, and mine helped me move towards better things. Now, knowing this, is there any reason why you would think that the primate and I should stay together? I can't imagine you staying with me as a pet. What if you regress further? Now she was crying a lot. You're being so terrible, she sobbed. I wish you would just slap me like Alan gave Rhoda. I probably deserve it, but it's just cruel. It's all logic. Any cruelty you feel is simply a reaction to my point of view. I'm sorry Alan hit Rhoda. This is not my way. This was your path. You fought for me back in school. You fought for me and defeated me. It was exciting. So, her words took my breath away for a moment. So I had to keep fighting to keep you from cheating? This is all? Oh no, but it meant so much. It meant that you loved me more than anything or anyone else. Then let me ask you this. Who did you fight for me? There was a long silence as she realized the intolerable position she had put herself in. I'm sorry, Daniel. I am so sorry. She hung up. I didn't call back. I guess I didn't love her as much as I thought. Perhaps being together as long as we have means polishing the gold shine to platinum, although I expect that's what happens to most couples. In any case, she was no longer special to me, just ordinary. Just a woman you would pass by on the street without thinking or considering. So, in the end, despite Alice's screams and gnashing of teeth, and, admittedly, a few misgivings and thoughts of forgiveness from me, we headed to divorce court. I thought about how to somehow take revenge on these idiots, but then I realized that it was impossible. They had been farming all their lives, so they were probably even stronger physically now than they were as teenagers. And I no longer had a cricket bat. More importantly, a closer look at Google Maps revealed that their crops were probably mostly dirt, and the farmhouse they shared with 2 wives and a horde of poorly dressed children in rags looked more like the remains of a gypsy camp than anything else. I couldn't do anything to them that could make their lives worse. I suppose my wife and sister-in-law's quarterly visits to their village were probably the highlights of their entire miserable lives. Christmas, Easter, Guy Fawkes, and New Year's all rolled into 2 nights. Perhaps that's why the Morris dancers came to the party. Alice and I agreed amicably enough to divide the property for the divorce, even though I absolutely insisted that she keep all the crap she brought home from their antiques and continue to rent the house. I moved out and found my own place. Alan and Rhoda had a tough time for a few years, but they eventually settled down again after my brother first orchestrated and then regretted his own 4-month affair, which somewhat equalized them. I lost a few friends in the months before and after my divorce, but it wasn't for the reason I thought it was. It had nothing to do with my broken marriage. I don't give a damn about your divorce, my friend explained when I asked him about it. She cheated on you and you got divorced. This is not the first time this has happened in our circle, and I have learned not to take sides. No, the point is that you've become a bit of an asshole. A pretentious and arrogant asshole. Every time we get together, I get the feeling that you look down on us all, although you try to hide it. We went to school together and both received the same education. So what is this arrogant attitude and talking down to us, as if you know something hidden from others? Homeschooling was the only answer I could give at the time, but thinking about what he said made me realize he was right. There was nothing wrong with him as a friend, but I treated him and the rest of the people we interacted with as less intelligent and almost uneducated. I have truly become a complete and utter asshole. And yet I couldn't turn back into the person I used to be before this whole mess started. The blissfully stupid, unsuspecting cuckold who just skimmed effortlessly across the surface of life, leaving few ripples along the way. I couldn't do it for them, and I didn't try to do it for myself. I refused to be that person in the future. I left my old life behind. After a few months of wandering around Britain, I moved on, eventually traveling the world and earning a living in many countries as an English, history, or geography teacher. I spent many hours on my laptop when I visited and learned the local languages. In Taiwan, I met and fell in love with a tiny university professor. She was a local, and her real name was Mei Lin, which meant beautiful and gentle, and was quite appropriate. However, most Taiwanese also have English names, and Kitty was the name she usually responded to, which suited her personality perfectly. She was pleasant to look at, but at first she was prickly and distant. However, after we got to know each other better, she became playful and always affectionate, and she liked to be petted and caressed like a gentle cat when she sat on my lap or lay on me. A cat small enough for both of us, it was completely comfortable. All her other preferences were completely human, and that's how I felt about her. So we were perfect for each other. After we got married and moved to Australia, my nieces and nephew, individually or together, came to visit us in Sydney whenever they had time off to go on holiday. Sean was happy that I could talk to him about his astrophysics research and rocketry development. And as for Alice, it would be wonderful to imagine that she withered away and died miserably without me. No, she finally met and married a farmer who wasn't Talbot, raised a foster family, and was quite happy with her ordinary life. I finally apologized to her for calling her such harsh names during that phone call. I assured her that she was not, in fact, genetically retarded or a sneaky criminal, just a greedy, evil, and selfish individual. For some reason, she didn't consider it an apology, but I didn't feel the need to continue further. I heard that she no longer deals in antiques, and all the furniture in her house is as new as they can afford. Memories are not always pleasant. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.